YouTube, what's good with it, man? It's your boy Neo Cannabis, and I'm back with another video. So in this video today, we're going to be going over who fucked up the prices the most. Who fucked up the prices the best? Like my boy Flocka says.
Who can fuck the prices up the most? Who can fuck the prices up the worst?
Ooh, who is the main culprit? And I'm gonna come from a different angle, because a lot of people say it's just one thing, or they just think it's just, oh, supply and demand. Oh, it's just $100 billion industry is not complex. Like, these markets don't have a variety of factors for why they're on the decline. People all of a sudden they hear supply and demand and think they're economists all of a sudden, and they don't really even understand the full scope of the industry. So I'm going to be coming at it from a different angle. But before we hop into this, if you're new to the channel, my name is Neo Cannabis. In 2018, I started a licensed cannabis delivery service based in Oakland, California, and within 2 years scaled that business into a 7-figure operation. Currently, I teach prospective and already existing cannabis entrepreneurs how to start and scale their own cannabis businesses. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, please like, share, comment, subscribe. You're not gonna want to miss out. Also, for anything within this cannabis industry, I am your source, from vendors, consultations, collabs, free resources, access to individuals within my network. Please hit my email, neocannabis1@gmail.com, and I will get you right. So without further ado, let's hop into this one, man. Who fucked up the prices the most? Let's get to the bottom of this. Again, I'm going to come from a different angle. So let's really break this down. Of course, the easy cop out is supply and demand. Okay, everybody is economists now. Oh, Neo, it's just too much supply. There's too much supply. That's why the prices are tanking. You know, federal legalization, things like that. Okay, yes. I'm not saying that doesn't play a factor into this. However, let's really think about it. There's really 3 to 4 states that are pumping out bags like that. You got California, Colorado, Oklahoma, Michigan. That's about it. Yes, there's about 25 states that are rec legal, but I'm talking about the states that are really pumping out units. So you got about 3-4 states. Colorado is really on the decline. It's really the hot states are Michigan, California, Oklahoma. So you got 3 states that's supposed to be supplying the entire nation. The other 25, 26 states that aren't rec legal, we can say that there is not going to be a large access to cannabis. There's over 300 million people within this country. Over 300 million people. So in those 26, 25 states that are not rec legal, that population combined is about half of the US. So are you really saying that these 3-4 states are supplying enough product for not only their own state, but also all of the other non-rec legal states in the country for the rest of the half of the US population? No, bro, I live in an illicit state, Georgia. There's definitely not a oversupply of cannabis. However, listen to this. You can still get good quality weed on the street, and it's cheap. That is not the law of supply and demand. For those who don't know the law of supply and demand, if supply spikes and the demand doesn't equal that supply, then the price will reflect as such, and the price will have to decrease because there's not enough demand to eat up that supply, and vice versa. If there's a lot of demand and not enough supply, the price of that said product is going to increase, because that product, that commodity, is extremely more valuable. It's harder to get. It's more sought after. There's more demand for it. There's not enough supply. Therefore, people are going to raise the price for it. So to tie this all back up, there's not a oversupply of cannabis. We're way too early for that within this industry. There's a oversupply of sellers, because you have to think nowadays, everybody wants to become a trapper. Everybody wants to become the plug. Everybody wants to become the middleman. There's an oversupply of retail and middleman brokers, trappers. There's just a way too big oversupply of it, because if you break it down onto a smaller scale, if I have a pound, let's say I have a pound of weed, I break that pound down and I give 1/8 to over 120 people. That 1 pound, that could be the last pound in the area that I have. But there's a facade that's going to be created that there's an oversupply, but no, there's just an oversupply of sellers, because now there's 120 people trying to sell that 1/8. And then now there's all these people trying to get off the 1/8, and now people got eighths for 20. Oh no, I'm gonna sell my 1/8 for 15. I'm gonna sell my 1/8 for 10. So now that creates a reduction in the price, because there's an oversupply of competition, of unexperienced trappers, of unexperienced business owners, because it goes back to people who are unexperienced within this industry think that the only way to compete, the only way to obtain customers is to compete on price. That's their only thing that they think will separate them from the next man. I've talked about that in different videos, but that's what inexperienced people who never ran a business, people who've never trapped on a high level, that's the only thing that they can think of to differentiate themselves to the competition. You got eights for 20. Oh shit, I'm gonna fuck up the market. I'm gonna have eights for 15. But what does that create? That creates a race to the bottom. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a oversupply of product. That just means that there's an oversupply of individuals who are not educated, who do not value the product that they're selling, and do not understand that reducing your price only creates a race to the bottom. It's a game that you will never win. The market is not oversaturated. You can go into markets that are known as cannabis deserts. You can go into places even in California where there's not access to weed, and you can still get weed for cheap even though there's not a oversupply of it. People are always looking for plugs. People are in my DMs begging me for plugs, bro. If there was such a huge oversupply, it would be easily accessible to find quality weed to sell consistently. We're talking about on a consistent basis. Not you got a couple bags of za, a couple of runs, and then after you sold it all, you can't even get in contact with that same plug or that same grower or that same broker. So we have to really think about this on a creative level. Don't just jump and assume and think you know everything and think these $100 billion markets like cannabis are that simple. These markets are way more complex and come down to a variety of factors other than just, supply and demand. When you don't even understand supply and demand, because in markets like where I live in Georgia, I'm going to say it again, there's definitely not a oversupply of great quality product. However, it is not that hard to find cheap, decent weed. It's not that hard because there's an oversupply of sellers in the market. All these sellers are selling the same quality product. It's going to give the facade that, oh, wow, there's an oversupply. But when I start asking, do you have sativas? Do you have this? Do you have that? What other strains? You can see there's not an oversupply of it. If there was an oversupply, everybody would have 10 different strains. Everybody would have bags. It would just be so easily accessible. It would be even more plugs. But that's just not the case. So you ask, Neil, why is this important? How do I insulate myself from falling victim to this facade that, it's supply and demand, there's nothing that we can do? You know what always protects you from a race to the bottom when it comes to pricing is brand. Brand is the only thing that will insulate you. So if you're looking to get into this industry, you need to start a brand. You need to start your own brand in whatever capacity that is, whether that's THCA. If you want to trap on the black market, and I'll touch more into THCA in other videos, but if you still want to go on the black market, you still have to figure out how you are going to brand yourself. What are your unique selling propositions? Why is somebody going to shop with you and not shop with the person down the street? What is your identity? What do you want people to know you for? How do you want people to perceive you, and how do you want people to talk about you when they're referring you to other people? Do you want them to have a positive experience or a negative experience? These are all things that you need to think of. Everything is not supply and demand. Supply and demand is a factor, but a way to insulate yourself from supply and demand is to build your own brand. Because once I build my own brand, I can charge whatever I want as long as there is demand for my brand. It doesn't matter what the product is that I'm selling. People F with the brand. So who fucked up the prices the most? It's not federal legalization. It's not an oversupply of product. It's these funky ass, no good, no value for themselves trappers. They're not educated. They don't know what they're selling. You got to think most trappers, most people that sell weed, they got into the business of selling weed because they wanted to smoke for free. That's usually most people's stories. I used to smoke and shit. I was just like, man, why don't I start selling weed? Shit, I could just sell weed and then I could smoke and I can pretty much break even. So if that's most people's mentalities, they're not looking at trapping. They're not looking at this from a business perspective. They're looking at it as something that's fun because there's not a hard barrier to entry. You just buy a couple ounces off of somebody and now you're a trapper. There's no barrier to entry to become a trapper. There's a barrier to entry to have a popping brand. It takes groundwork. It takes dedication. It takes hard work. It takes consistency. There's barriers to entry to having a brand. There's no barrier to entry to becoming a trapper. I can become a trapper whether I have an ounce, whether I have a pound, whether I have 10 pounds. I'm still considered a trapper. So insulate yourself from these clowns, man, from these people that are just selling for a means to an end. Let's start trapping for a purpose. Let's start understanding business. Who fucked up the prices the most? These funky ass trappers, man. If this video brought you any type of value, please like, share, comment, subscribe if you're new. And until next time, peace. I'm out.